I've preached this this text, fifth Sunday of Epiphany, several times, and usually something about fish and catching people for God, for Jesus, to live a new life. But you know, somehow this time, I wanted to do something different, and so I thought this time, instead of talking about reaching out for fish, we will talk about answering the call to go deep. This past Christmas was different for me. My two sons were not, and their families were not able to come to Minneapolis this year. No granddaughters, no need for wind-up toys. Oh, no need to buy Annie's macaroni and cheese. No list of things to do every day, and no need for a tree with all those trimmings. I wasn't sure that I was going to like that, changing all those traditions. So I got a small tabletop-sized tree and put colored lights on it. That was kind of nice, actually. It provided the same bright lights in the midst of this dark time of year. And then, fortunately, there were 7 social occasions that I was invited to, which were fun, and special Christmas dinners, which I enjoyed greatly. And I put out only my favorite Christmas decorations. What do you know? Christmas turned out to be happy without all those other traditions. It was a new awareness. It was an epiphany. You never know when something will happen to provide you a new epiphany, something to think about in a different way. Someone shows us a new way to cook some food that's especially delicious. I would probably never learn this lesson. Or someone at work demonstrates for us a better way to keep track of information. The person who seemed very fussy and was always preoccupied with unnecessary details has suddenly been diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and all of a sudden it all makes sense to you. No wonder that person acts that way. And that is an epiphany for us. It's kind of exciting to discover something new. An insight, an awareness, a new way to live. In the church, we label this season called Epiphany. It's green now. It used to be white. I don't know why they had to change that, but they did. And largely, it's about discovering who Jesus is. The wise travelers from the East are some of the first who tell Herod about him. The crowds hear Jesus preach. Individuals receive healing. And some of what they learn infuriates them. They try to push him off a cliff. And sometimes they're surprised to hear Jesus say to them that it's their job to feed the hungry and free the captive and let the oppressed go free. Every now and then it occurs to us that we are the captives. Captives of materialism, captives of self-loathing, captives of the need for power. An epiphany. We're the ones who need freedom from a life that we don't even realize is oppressing. Today's text is, in fact, a call to vocation, to caring, to teaching others, to being the ones who fish in behalf of Jesus. And when Peter and the fishermen are frustrated by having no success at fishing, Jesus says, put into deep water. And what do you suppose? Their nets are filled. Jesus reveals himself again. Now it terrifies Peter because the power that Jesus displays and what that means for Peter what lies ahead if they follow him. Jesus is more than a community organizer. He has authority and power. It's an epiphany for Peter. Scary. And don't we also have those terrifying moments of awareness? The moment when a doctor says someone has cancer, when we are afraid of our death, or losing someone we love, or losing our job, or a sudden slip on glare ice. Darkness, fear, tragedy, loss of control. Something we cannot change or go around face to face with one of life's realities. And what does Jesus say? Put your nets in deeper, deeper. Deep water. Turn off the TV and the phone. Stop for a minute and listen to life. Look at it. Life's not intended to be a series of conquests and happy moments. Life is a challenge, plain and simple. And if we're going to survive or understand life, we have to face what it tells us. If we're listening to the world, life's difficulties cannot be avoided or denied. Now, if you haven't noticed, I have to mention that weather has been a little uncertain lately. Changeable, hard work. Now that we've decided that the world should come to Minnesota to find the true north, we come to face the fact that we are people accustomed to seasons. And the seasons may be kind of rearranging themselves lately. But we do live in a land where weather matters. To say nothing of the reality of the climate change that's happening to the whole planet at rapid speed. And life is like that. Just when you develop a tradition around Christmas, families need to change their patterns, and tradition is no more. You get through an unusually difficult year and take a deep breath of gratitude, and the car needs a new transmission. We live through personal seasons. Now, marriage always has hills and valleys. Our kids go through new stages of emotions. We realize that we're depressed, even though things seem normal and there's no reason to be blue. There are seasons to our lives. So I appreciate that the church with a capital C, that universal church, has shaped its year into seasons. In the midst of darkness, with the sun, when the sun sets at 4:30 in the afternoon, we have Christmas lights. And the hope we've been promised comes in the baby in Bethlehem. And then comes this season of awareness, Epiphany, when we can look at the multiple meanings of Jesus and what he did and what he said. One discovery after another. And often during Epiphany, Jesus is talking not only about our little clan or corner of the world, but about the whole world. Here I am, send me. Isaiah had an epiphany moment. He's got these seraphs around him, strange things, the big throne, and he says, wait a minute, this stuff is for me. Epiphany is showing us the way too, the way that Jesus lived and how he's leading us into that same kind of discipleship. Send me. The next church season after Epiphany helps us face some of life's hardest realities. Lent, death, suffering. 6 weeks, and the color is purple. The stories are about Jesus heading to Jerusalem to face the empire and die. Encompassed in this is the validation of the fact that life also has disappointments, disagreements, depression, sorrow, grief, failures, and fears. And Jesus shows us how to walk the way of the cross, when to let go and let God. So what am I driving at? I'm encouraging us to see new insights. Find ways to have an epiphany of understanding about the meanings of life. Throw your nets into deeper water. Sign up for the IDI inventory. Discover something new about yourself. Stop and ask yourself, what is it that scares me most? Say it out loud. Face it. Once when I was in a difficult situation in a congregation, I was really overwhelmed. There were so many people and needs and challenges. So I decided I would write down on a little note, post-it note, whatever it was that was disturbing me or jarring me. And I would pin that onto a bulletin board. And little by little, the post-it notes piled up. And then I began to see how they were falling into categories and common needs. But because I had printed them out, faced them, pinned them onto a bulletin board, I began to have a sense of control about where to begin, and I was less overwhelmed. It became sort of self-discovery, self-awareness. It's not uncommon for us to think that have ideas of what is acceptable in our emotions. Some of us have been taught we should not have tears, for example. That's often true in the message to men and boys. And I think of a young man who allows himself to feel anger, but will not admit his fear. So he becomes angry when he's actually frightened about his child. And that confuses everyone. On the other hand, women and girls are not supposed to be angry or aggressive. So they become passive or bury their anger until it turns into resentment. And most of us, at some time or another, try to hide our sense of failure or our lack of ability. As we try to look, we try to look daily as if we're always in charge. Everything is fine. But to begin to grow, we have to be honest with ourselves. When we offer the truth to others about ourselves, it helps them express their concerns, and we all benefit from the compassion. You don't have to do it alone. One of the greatest epiphanies I ever had was to realize that I don't have to do everything alone. I don't have to keep pain or suffering to myself. I can share my grief, especially here at church, where I know people will understand. I can ask for help because everyone knows what it means to need support. I remember when my boys were young hockey players, their dad coached on Saturday. He coached the mites, you know, the little ones. All you do all day is stand them up, and then go to the next one and stand him up, and then you have to go back. So after those games, we would all gather at some family's home. Maybe we'd have chili, and the kids would be off playing, and the adults would be standing around telling stories and laughing. They were wonderful times together. It was real community building. And here at Calvary are occasions when groups gather, fathers and kids, women on a retreat, youth on a trip, circles, people gathering together to bless a new home. It can be the start of meaningful conversation, of telling the truth to each other, of sharing tears over mutual loss, of encouraging each other. We build a richer community. We drop our nets into deeper water. Your phone can't do that for you. It has limitations, including lack of empathy, or the skill of realizing that something isn't quite right with us. We need other people to be aware of what is going on in our hearts. Church seasons reflect and validate our emotions of all kinds and all our struggles in life. We need the church season epiphany to realize that Jesus walked his whole walk with us. Tell each other you love and need each other. Experience life beyond news reports and vacations and new recipes and winning contests. Stop and think about what it means to love and to live and to die. Jesus said, let your nets go deep. Let your nets go deep. Your lives will be filled with love and caring. Amen. So be it.